pedophile Jeffrey Epstein was arrested. So why do we still know nothing about him? Well, we're finding out tonight some answers. The Wall Street Journal just got its hands on Jeffrey Epstein's private calendar, and it was a lot more suspicious than Brett Kavanaugh's. Epstein was meeting with the kind of people you'd think would steer clear of a convicted pedophile. Jeffrey Epstein was meeting with one of Barack Obama's top lawyers, Catherine Rumler. She met with Epstein dozens of times. Epstein even tried to set up Obama's lawyer to work for Bill Gates. How is Jeffrey Epstein a fixer between Obama's lawyer and Bill Gates? Epstein was also meeting with Joe Biden's CIA director. He wasn't CIA director at the time. He was Barack Obama's deputy secretary of state. William Burns was working for John Kerry at the State Department and meeting with Jeffrey Epstein, a known pedophile. And then Burns becomes CIA director. Today's director of the CIA went to Epstein's Manhattan townhouse where Epstein had sex with underage girls and, where he filmed other men having sex with underage girls. And William Burns went there and was then promoted to the director of the CIA. Now, I wonder if the future CIA director saw the portrait of Bill Clinton in a blue dress hanging in Epstein's parlor room. A few years later, Epstein was arrested and then hung himself in a jail cell while security cameras just happened to not be working and the replacement guards just happened to fall asleep. And 2 years later, Biden just happens to pick William Burns to run the CIA. So what are we supposed to think? It's never been more clear. Epstein was an intelligence asset. Not only was he working for the CIA, Israeli intelligence, maybe even Russia intelligence. So is the American government allowing an asset to traffic and molest teenage girls all over the world for intelligence? Were we allowing Epstein to commit crimes against children for blackmail material? Well, we asked the CIA director, William Burns, why were you meeting with a convicted pedophile at his disgusting townhouse? And the CIA director said this: the director did not know anything about him, other than that he was introduced as an expert in the financial services sector and offered general advice on transition to the private sector. They had no relationship. So Obama's State Department official couldn't have asked anybody else in the entire country for help with a job in finance? He could have called any CEO, any hedge fund manager, any banking director. But he meets with Jeffrey Epstein, a guy that doesn't even really have a real business, a guy that doesn't even have a website, a guy that, as far as we know, only had one client, the CEO of Victoria's Secret. That doesn't add up, Burnsy. And this explains the sweetheart deal back in 2006. This explains the prison cell cover-up. And this explains why all the Epstein tapes went missing. Everything Epstein recorded, everything, missing. Every property he owned. But when he died, the Fed seized all the tapes, and the only person who's ever been arrested since then was the Madam, Maxwell.
Jeffrey Epstein found me almost immediately. He knew exactly where I was, the location. And I knew then that I was being filmed. I was being watched 24/7. There were cameras all over the island.
So the CIA has all the sex tapes, and they've been blackmailing like crazy. This is the blackmail jackpot. Hours of video starring the world's most important people in Epstein Island, in the Manhattan townhouse, and the Palm Beach estate, and the New Mexico ranch. Bill Clinton was good pals with Jeffrey. Flew on the Lolita Express 26 times. Went to his private island.
Epstein was transfixed with transhumanism and life extension technologies. Epstein's sprawling ranch in New Mexico, which was pedantically maintained by staff, appeared to have one main bizarre function: to serve as a baby-making facility where Epstein would attempt to help foster his dream of, quote, seeding the human race with his DNA by impregnating women. According to the New York Times, Mr. Epstein told scientists and businessmen about his ambitions to use his New Mexico ranch as a base where women would be inseminated with his sperm and would give birth to his babies. Epstein's goal was to have 20 women impregnated at a time at the 33,000 square foot ranch.
Dulce, New Mexico Mexico is 170 kilometers from the Four Corners. Dulce is 260 kilometers from Scientology's heavily guarded underground Trementina base. And Dulce is 200 kilometers from Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch, which is known to have an 8,000 square foot underground level and is rumored to lead even deeper underground. According to several prominent scientists who Jeffrey Epstein had as guests, Epstein hoped to seed the human race after a cataclysm by impregnating 20 women at a time at the Zorro Ranch. Ghislaine Maxwell had a submarine license and was known to transport people to Epstein Island through an underwater submarine port. The U.S. military built a submarine base on St. Thomas Island, which is just 13 kilometers from Epstein Island. And right next to this submarine base is Water Island, owned by Joe Biden's brother and their business associate. In a recent interview on Iconic, Juliette Bryant, who was kidnapped by Jeffrey Epstein for 2 years, but she did wake up once paralyzed on a lab table and witnessed Epstein shapeshift into something else.
And I still want to know why exactly I was taken there, because there's a lot more weird stuff going on, there's something else that they were doing.
This is why, since the early 2000s, Epstein became obsessed with ingratiating himself with the technological and scientific elite. The sex magic rituals performed by Epstein and his co-conspirators weren't just about fulfilling their perverted sexual fantasies. They were also part of the occult belief that absorbing psychosexual energy from victims would actually make them live longer. Bizarre beyond belief. I know how crazy it sounds. But the life extension angle with Epstein was literally reported by the New York Times. No one's talking about any of that, though. No one's talking about the missing blackmail material from Epstein's mansion. Questions also continue to swirl over the weirder proclivities of what Epstein and his elite cohorts were really up to. We know that Epstein was obsessed with trying to groom the tech elite. His infamous dinners with Bill Gates.
What did you know about him when you were meeting with him?
I had dinners with him. I regret doing that.
He also tried to cozy up to Elon Musk, inviting him to his mansion, but Musk immediately got the heebie-jeebies and decided to steer well clear.
Stem cell technology that Peter and I are investing in is called SCNT, which takes the egg of a young, perfect woman specimen, takes the egg and takes out the nucleus and puts our DNA in the nucleus. They just go ahead and take it out.
It's egg fluoride?
Huh? And this is part of this genetic greatness that we don't see in any other race on the planet. These curvy, sexy black women from Africa. You girls have a kind of a monopoly on this genetic perfection, and we want some of that.
Where are the 500,000 to 1 million unaccompanied alien children? Where in the hell are these kids? In one place, I have been told that we need to start looking, and it made perfect sense when, and I didn't even think of it, a lot of people are saying, you need to start looking underground. I'm like, what do you mean underground? Well, JJ, there's whole tunnels, underground tunnels, there's underground spaces, living places. Where do you hide children? You have to hide them out of sight.
So when someone does something that doesn't make any sense, maybe it's because they don't want to be doing what they're doing. Maybe it's because someone's telling them what to do and threatening to release the tapes if they don't.